All right. All right, I'll give just a quick overview and thank you all for joining. We did have a pretty good response, so we expect more people to join, but just in the interest of everyone's time, we can go ahead and get started. So I'm Will Rouse. I'm the sales director here at Avail. I know a lot of you all, and some I've met personally and spent a lot of time with, and others just kind of meeting for the first time. But thank you all for joining us today. Randall is going to do a bulk of the talking this afternoon, at least in the beginning. And then we want to turn the opportunity over to all of you all. So I think everyone in general is familiar with the concept of an Ask Me Anything, and you can ask us anything. And we would love it if you wanted to turn your camera on and then I'll probably unmute if you want to like raise your hand when you have a question, and then we can try to unmute people and make this as conversational as possible. I think is generally the tone we're going to go for. We've never done it in this format before, so we're just going to kind of see how it goes. We did get a lot of questions beforehand, so we took a couple minutes to kind of chop the questions up into logical groupings, and we're going to answer them, live and show you guys as much as we can inside the actual software itself, what the answers to some of those questions are. And really, I think, if just to kind of like set your maybe the tone going forward is, we wanted to host this because there were a lot of questions about Avail. There were a lot of questions about Autodesk and Unify and Content Catalog. So we thought this is a great opportunity I was doing a lot of this one-to-one with people. Randall was doing this a lot one-to-one with people. So we thought maybe a great opportunity would be to just like invite as many people that wanted to come and have them ask any question that they want to ask about the product, about the business, about the future, about the past, any of that stuff. And also, if anybody can guess, I have one thing I put out on LinkedIn when we did this. If anybody can guess or knows already who Randall's favorite band is, I promised that I would personally mail them an Avail shirt, and I've given out one hint. And so if you can look and you can guess, raise your hand at any point, and we'll see. But I've already given the hint, and it's the only hint that I'm giving. So Randall, why don't I give you the opportunity? I'll mute myself. I'll be watching comments in the chat. So if you got questions, you want to drop them there, or raise your hands, and we're going to kind of freewheel it from here. So Randall, I'll turn it to you, man.
Yeah, thanks, Will. What's that weird background you've got on your?
It may not be that clear, but this is the only hint.
Oh, okay. Now I see. I thought it was food.
It's not food. It's the only other thing I care about as much as food. So
okay.
But it is the hint.
Oh, okay. I got it. I forgot. I ruined it for you. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining. Like I said, this is the first time we've probably in a long time that we've done kind of a live, webinar like this. In the early days, for those of you that were around back in 2016, 17, when we were getting this thing launched, we did a lot of meetings like this with people and just getting this thing off the ground. But thanks for joining. As Will kind of teed up, we ask people a bunch of questions. I'm going to try to see if I can take the first half of this and just kind of answer some of those questions. And I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff, and hopefully that'll get the wheels turning. And then we'll make the second half of this just open for you guys to pepper us with questions and follow up on any of this. So I'm going to, there's a few of these questions. I'm just going to, before I dive over and showing you some of what's on the roadmap, but I'm going to show you the code that's actually, this stuff's inevitable. There's a few of these questions that came through, and I'm just going to rattle those off. I'm not going to answer them right now, but you'll see them in the answer, I think, around the things I'm getting ready to show you. So we had somebody ask, will Avail ever become cloud-based? That's an open-ended question. It already is partially cloud-based. There's also desktop software, but I'm going to show you some things that maybe help to answer that too. When will assemblies be available to harvest and upload to Avail? We've actually got builds of code right now with our harvest application that are handling assemblies. So I would expect that we'll be able to hand customers that code in the next week or two for testing. So that's coming. There was a question about several questions about AI and what we're planning to do around AI. I'm going to show you some things. We can open this up at the end, obviously, for y'all asking more about what we plan to do on that front. But for sure, we are digging in and doing a bunch of work behind the scenes here around how a lot of this new technology is going to impact, we think, the way that what Avail can do and how we can help you all. Were there any plans for AI-generated content use in projects like, really around data, I think, frequently used versus not used, content that gets changed in a project? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Hoping to hear more about AI. There's a bunch of AI questions. So just be thinking. I'm gonna now kind of dive in and show you guys some of the things that are. First, I want to share my screen and show you all the roadmap. And all right, got it. So this is our, we call it our public roadmap. We try to keep this thing. I keep a date down here in the bottom left-hand corner about when this is updated. Obviously, things change. I always describe these roadmaps as the things on the far left are closest to us. Those are the most assured, and the things further out are, what we're thinking of and planning, but, sometimes get pushed out. So the things in this first that you can see that are kind of this teal color are imminent. We're really working towards what'll be an Avail 5.0 release cycle. The way for those of you that have been using for Avail for a while, we kind of, as we release features, we get them out into preview release and then ultimately into production as they become available. We don't wait for some kind of major event, an Avail, but these features are all culminating in what we're going to call our kind of Avail 5.0 release cycle. First thing you can see down in this far left, and this is imminent. We'll start working with enterprise customers in April on this, but we have built out application version management. By that, what we mean for Revit. And what we mean by that is, we're going to be able to, we're using Forge on the back end, but we are automatically versioning content now, Revit content. So it'll be an option. You can choose to use it, not use it. It comes with some constraints. Ultimately, content has to be living in the cloud for us to do these kinds of things, but we are automatically versioning content now. So I'm not going to demo any of that today, but that's coming out. I guess along with that cycle, we're probably a week or two from Autodesk 2025 release cycle. We've got the plugins ready to roll. There's actually some new things in 2025 that we're able to take advantage of inside of Revit. That'll be some updates to the project navigator, but kind of everything's, and there were some breaking changes in this release cycle. So we kind of got everything ready to roll on the normal 2025 release cycle. And part of that was that we wanted to get this application version management ready for that release cycle too. So you're going to see us being able to release that. All right, a couple of other features. We've been working on a new feature called palettes, and I'm going to give you a demo of that here in a second. And for those of you that were at AU last year, you may have seen us demoing this new concept called related content. So I'm going to get out of this slide deck, and I'm going to show you what we mean by this palettes and related content. So this is a dev. I'll just always refer. This is a dev build of Avail. What that means for us is it's not running on our production servers. It's running in our dev environment. When sometimes these services have to spin up, so sometimes it acts a little sluggish when we're running. But I'll just kind of warn you that but you'll get the idea. But this is actually code. So we've been working on Erica on our team has been spearheading this effort, but a new feature called palettes. The concept is that, we use a metaphor of channels for organizing content, and that's what you're all using in Avail to organize your libraries of content and to share out and put content out there to users. Palettes are a little bit of the inverse of that, in that palettes are, I keep calling them channel by another name, might be a little bit dangerous, but it's basically now in the user's hands to be able to march around Avail and gather up things that they're finding in Avail that they want to use, and they can create a palette to put those on. So you can imagine the users using this to maybe keep some of their favorite things in as they want to use it. Use cases, we heard customers asking us in a bunch of different ways for something around this. We heard people asking for this concept of a shopping cart that I want to be able to go and grab things, that people wanted to be able to kind of create these temporary channels and favorites. And, what that boils down to for us was we need to start thinking about this ability that not from content being pushed out and through channels, but to let users kind of I think of it as more the grassroots up, create these little they could be temporary or they could hang around for a long time, but like a temporary bucket of organizing things. So you can see here on the left, I've got this concept of palettes. Creating a palette is as easy as creating the little create symbol, giving it a name, and that's it. Things that you'll start to notice, palettes can also be shared with other people. So this will be the first time the users will be able to kind of march around their content that you've given them access to, and they'll be able to put this stuff in these kind of logical groupings. So you can see here that this is content that I found right here's however many pieces that is, 5, 6, 7, 8 pieces of content that show up in this palette. I can also do things like those palettes will be able to open up in their own little windows and be moved around. You can imagine these in your Revit workflows, being able to use these to kind of gather up content. I'm going to go kind of back to one of these main channels and show you how content gets into a palette. So I'm just going to go to a channel where I know I've got some details. So here's a channel that's full of details, drafting views. And again, this is on our dev server, so it's running a little slow. Hold on. What we don't have implemented yet is drag and drop onto these palettes. You can imagine as we tear off one of those palettes, you'd love to be able to just sit here and drag things from one channel over onto a palette. Right now, it requires you to, see that piece of content in a channel like this. And if I right click, I can add, you can see in my right click menu, I can add to a palette. And I could do multiples of these at a time. So if I wanted to come in here and say, add 3 of these details to a palette, up comes my, I named this one that, hey, these are details related to this project. You're always copying, you're never moving this content around. This is just think of it as like a temporary way that users are now thinking about content around a project and how they may use it. What was driving one of the main use cases that was driving this, and I'll show you an extension of this capability. So here I've gone around. The story that we were being asked to see if we could fulfill was that you've got a PM that wants to go into the detail library and choose details for a project. They need a way of now saying, these are the details that I want you to use on the project. They need to be able to hand those off to maybe a Revit specialist that's going to take those details in after they've marked them up in Bluebeam, or I'm going to talk about in a second. We've actually got redlining tools on the way so that you can do this natively. But the first use case was, hey, our PMs need to go through this library, grab things, spit them out into a PDF so that we can edit those in Bluebeam or do my markup in Bluebeam, and then pass that back to somebody that's working in Revit to go do that work. So what you're going to see here is the palettes are the first piece of that. That's the running around and gathering up what you need for a specific project. Now that I've done that, I can decide I want to share that. So I might be sharing that with Will if he's in our dev environment. Doesn't look like he is. Todd is. So I could share that with another user, share this palette with them. And then if you look over here on the right, this is one of our we haven't named this yet, but this is actually a PDF generator, and not only PDFs, but you can save out images. So this lets you create documents basically. So I'm going to go into a mode over here where if I click on that little icon, now as I touch things that are in my palette over here, they end up on sheets, and I can either create another sheet and now say I'm going to put, maybe I'm putting 2 of these details on a sheet or 3 of these details on a single sheet. And then I can actually save that out as a PDF. So here I'm going to save that out. Here's I'll just call this my red lines. And Now you've got a PDF document that you could bring into Bluebeam or do whatever it is that you're going to do and do your redlining, pass that info around. So we've got this this code has come along pretty quickly. If I went back to that slide, you'd see we had this kind of slated in Q2. We're kind of ahead of the curve than we normally are. We always think about our roadmap as when we're working on it, but feel pretty confident that we'll be getting this in people's hands, at least in testing during the second quarter, that this feature is going to start releasing. And we'll hold questions. I'm just going to kind of march through. So this is what we call palettes, includes that export to PDF so that you can do the redlining. And then ultimately, we've got some redlining tools, and I'll give you kind of a demo of that here in a second. Next piece of software that we worked on, or next feature, was what we call related content. So let me make sure I've killed that dev version. So I'm going to launch another version. And again, we were showing off some of this code. So this isn't just slides. We've actually written a lot of the code in kind of getting ready for this feature set. But what you're going to see here, kind of cheated and tagged some content for this demo. But the idea is that content is not just individual items. Content is usually, in the world of AEC, one piece of an idea, just manifests itself in different kinds of files. So as an example of related content, I can take something like a Revit door family that might be in my library. And if I open up this window, what you're seeing is I have details from my detail library that are related to these doors. So again, if I'm sitting here in Revit and I've pulled in a door, I can in one click kind of have information that's been associated with that. Very close at hand because it's been created in this related content kind of context. Here's an example of like a wall, and you can see here I've got different materials that might be in your library that are related to those kind of wall types. Again, these are harvested materials for Revit that could be associated with this. Other examples, like here is an LED light fixture that's a Revit family, but I've got IES data that might be web-based IES data. So anything that you can index and manage in Avail, you can also make related content to one another through this related content concept. Things can also, let me see if I have to log in. This was another story that we heard from a customer that they had a lesson learned database that was actually a SharePoint database where data lives. So these are great examples of where it's really difficult to get people to go find this kind of stuff. But if there's things that you want to pull closer to them, you can do that through this concept of related content. So now instead of somebody having to proactively go, you can think about starting to bring and pull that kind of content and info up close to those users. In a material library, it might be something as simple as here's a texture map that's my RGB file, but it has a related bump map or something that goes with it. So all these things can start to be connected to each other. You can do this through, let me show you examples of like manufacturer content. Let's see if I've got any. So here's like an example of it. All right, let me pull this one up. Here's an example of like a park bench that's a generic in your maybe a generic content in your Revit library. But you can see here we've got commercial options, which is, as you're going to see, you may have a basis of design that you're usually using, right, for specific manufacturers. So here's an example where this might be our, preferred provider of park benches, and I'm linking directly to a URL. If I double clicked on that, that's just going to go open up my URL, right? My web browser for that. But as you know, we already can consume that stuff. And then here's materials out of the material library. Editing that is as easy as I've got editing privileges. This is all customizable by you. You can have your own language about how you maybe are going to structure related content inside your firm, and these things are going to be related. This is as easy as dragging and dropping content onto these things and ordering them in the way you want. And when you're done, that's what everybody's feeding from. So this will come out in the first half of the year. We've made quite a bit of progress, obviously, on this. and that's coming along quite well. Just another quick, interesting. There's some other interesting partnerships. This is, very simple example, but here you've got something like a toilet, and we've been talking with Amber Book. If you're familiar with Amber Book, they provide training material for helping people study for the AREs. The important thing here is that content like an Amber Book, right? Instead of thinking about that people are going to, once a year or periodically go study these things, the idea that you can begin to pull your training material right up next to the content that it makes sense to means that, the future of learning is probably in, 30-second to 5-minute little bits. And the only way you're going to get people to do that is to bring that information or content right up next to the content that they're working with. And so, this is YouTube videos playing out here, but you kind of get the idea. And this could be your own internal training info, right? That's being brought right up next to that content as well. So the important thing structurally for Avail is we're building this database behind the scenes that now knows how to interconnect information together. So now if you've got a piece of information that's being used, this is what we talk about pulling information. Instead of users going to information all the time, we'll begin to pull information by now, contextually with what they're doing and what content they're using at the time. We now have the ability to begin to pull that information forward in some new ways. And I'll talk about how AI is also going to, kind of impact this, or the way we envision that impacting it. So that's the related content concept. Let me go, let me jump out of here real quick. I've been running some, the reason I'm killing and closing is some of those are dev products, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to crash something if I go in and showing you things that are in the commercial version. So here I'm going to get right back into Avail. One thing that maybe some of you have seen, if you watched our Confluence podcast, I actually had Corey Rubidoux from ArcVision on there, and we were talking about this new FOVEA implementation. But one of the questions that we were being asked was around thumbnails and viewing content, better views of content, and those kinds of things. I'm going to use this FOVEA. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a taste of what this is and what its impact we think can be inside of your firm. And then I'm going to show you examples of how this is also going to impact the future of viewing your content, especially around Revit or really any of these content types. So what FOVEA does, just in a nutshell, think of it as a muxer behind the scenes that's able to natively translate native data, very rich data from multiple formats. About 14 different formats right now. What's not up here is Blender. So there's Rhino, Revit, SketchUp, Blender, V-Ray, Inkscape. Around all of these products, there's sometimes models, there's geometry, there's textures, there's materials, there's all these things that make all of that interplay complex, which is what's going on inside of your environments. So examples are, you've got a team working on the building in Revit, but your landscape team prefers to work in Rhino for doing landscape work. So that's a very complicated workflow to now get the building info lined back up with the Rhino landscape and exterior data that may be going on, and vice versa. But when you're visualizing it, both teams need that stuff in context. The promise of FOVEA is it literally makes that one click and in the future probably automated, that those versions of your content can move back and forth. So you can take your entire, I'm going to show you an example. You can take your entire Revit project, including materials and textures, and they come out and are able to be brought into Rhino and then shot into V-Ray for visualization in the context of your native Rhino, or vice versa. Things that were in Rhino can come out and be brought into Revit as one giant monolithic object, so it doesn't pollute it's not polluting your
I think we lost Randall, no? He looks frozen for me, Will.
It looks frozen for me too, and I was wondering if it was just I was
Yeah,
waiting for one brave soul.
it was like yeah.
Oh, he'll be back in. Well, how's everybody going so far? How's it going so far?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, Cal. He'll jump
Hey,
back on here in it. He'll jump
we have
back on in a second.
hi James.
He said his machine
Too much stuff open in this.
it was so
Cal, I was waiting for you to say Versailles.
Ah, yeah, Versailles. Actually, I'm going in 10 days. I'm traveling. Going home for 1 week, 10 days, 10 days. Yeah. Versailles. Yes, Will. Sorry.
said that's great. Has it been a while since you've been?
November 2022, but it was not in nice circumstances. It was for my
I remember.
my father passed. So
Well, it'd be home nonetheless, I imagine.
yeah.
Is this image behind me that bad? No, I only had one or two people recognize it, and I know that it's not that great, but are there no Rush fans or is the image that poor?
It's a little bit, yeah.
It was an out there clue. Somebody was going to really have to know.
I liked Rush, but I didn't recognize the image at all.
Yeah, me too. I know Rush, but I didn't recognize the drums.
It's a picture of Neil Peart's, one of Neil Peart's drum kits, and I think the image is not that great. It's probably a little bit grainy.
So if I'm going to take it like that, then like that.
Here.
I dropped it into Google Images and it didn't recognize it. So I,
Yeah,
I was trying to cheat
Trying to,
because I didn't
yeah.
I didn't
yeah.
recognize it. I thought, well, what is it? I didn't realize until you just said that it's a an above view of a
Aerial
band set.
view
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
He
yeah,
said
on top
Neil
of it.
Neil Neil Peart's kit.
Yeah.
Is that? So I did a capture of the image. I did exactly what James said on Google, and it says and it gave me the. Oops, I don't know if you see it. You see it?
2012, 2112, Kevin. Yep. Randall should be joining back in here shortly. There were some questions. Laura asked me if there were questions in here that I could answer, and they aren't there. It's no. I mean, there are questions that we want to ask about, can users change their cache location for cloud downloaded content? So that'll be something that we're going to talk about, or that we can open up here in a little bit. And then another question about loading from palettes. So I'll cue Randall up. Luke
And quick.
asked about.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. About versioning content. Are we going to get some access to the history itself, or it is just how are you guys envisioning the whole
there
versioning content?
there's two parts to the versioning equation or calculus, so to speak. There's application versioning, what year of the Revit file is this in? And then there's the document version. So the first part will be versioning means one of those two things usually, right? And so the first part will be what year Revit file is this? So I have a new Revit family and I want 21, 22, 23, 24, right? That version. The second part is what version of the file am I on? What like copy, And so I think we do have intentions to provide that second part, but it will come on down later on down the line a little bit. The first trouble for a lot of people seems to be when they create new content, they don't want to, they just want, they want it to be supported in all the forward versions of Revit, and they don't want to have to manually do that or rely on end users to do it or do it at the end of the year.
Sorry, I may have missed it. When is the ETA on that?
Hey, Chad, how are you?
Good. Yourself?
I'm doing well, man. It is like I have seen it in the office being done, so that means it's very close. Like we're like a couple weeks away, I think. Randall
4.6.
should be back on in here in just a moment, but yeah, usually when I see it, it's no longer like, hey, this is what it when it's no longer a description of, hey, this is what this is supposed to do, like instead now you're like, I'm actually looking at it, then I know that, hey, we're getting real close to this.
Thanks.
I have kind of an off-topic question, if that's all right.
Totally allowed.
Okay. I mean, not so off-topic, not like what's your favorite color. And unless you want to answer that. But so I'm with a smaller operation looking at exploring this type of organization for the first time. Avail is top of the list, but this has sort of been this would be a new level of organizing content. Do you guys have any recommendations for getting into this type of thing? Is this something that is not very friendly for maybe a smaller team, or is it more geared towards something of a bigger firm? All of the above, right? That's kind of where I'm at right now.
No, yeah. I mean, I've helped like 5 people use the product, and then I've helped 5,000 people use the product. So, it to some degree, I have to give you a vague answer and say, well, it's going to be what you make of it, right? There is some work that people involved in content management need to do. It's not fair to look at applications like this and say, this piece of software is going to solve all my problems, because like any workflow tool, I don't care if it's Salesforce or Avail or Asana or something like that. If you don't have a strategy or something that you're trying to enable, and you put a workflow tool on the strategy, it's just going to show you that it'll put a flashlight on your bad strategy.
Sure.
Right.
At the end of the day, it's still a tool, and it still needs to be used, right? It's not.
Yeah, there's human intervention. Yeah, there's human intervention, and we can make things, parts of it, easier. But I think it's totally fine. I mean, their group, I've had one guy use this, right? For specific capabilities. Yeah, you may, Cal.
Can I help answering? Look, before we are a very large organization. We're 18,000. So just to make it that way, we have 3,000 Revit users across the globe. But I would say we are villages. So it depends the team, it depends your department, it depends your business unit, etc. Then before we get to Avail or during the process, I would say we did an RFP. We surveyed the 20 companies. So Avail was the winner out of 20 possible. One of the survey or questions that we asked around our users was how much time are you searching for content over the net? That is the key question. Okay, the result was, in average, 3 to 4 days, maybe 3 days in a week. Imagine, it's a huge amount of time that your practitioners, engineers, drafters, designers, architects, whatsoever, civil guys, whatever, or other. Don't think only about Revit and CAD content. It can be anything. We do our manuals. We put our procedures on Avail. We have our Bluebeam profiles. We have our Bluebeam tool sets. We have marketing content, and so on, so on, so on. So, but I mean, again, you have a source of truth that is centralized in your company that can help specific group of users within your company. Am I clear? So, so if you spend, if AVAIL will divide that time even by half, that's a winner.
Sure.
Okay, so that was our approach, and every day I got feedback from all those hundreds of users saying, "Hey, Cal, that's the best purchase we got this year or whatever
Okay.
year." Okay.
I was going to say, what did I miss? But I didn't. I got
A
Cal.
sales pitch.
Thanks, Cal.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
am I getting a Confluence at my size? Because last time I got the Confluence for a medium size. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding.
No, so apologies. I was in our demo room and something happened with that machine and around Zoom, so I just moved back to my desk. Sorry,
No excuses.
Yeah, Will, do I want to pick back up, or where do we
go
want
back
to go?
in. I think you were getting ready to go into the AI stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or no, you were on FOVEA. Yeah.
Yeah, I was showing this FOVEA app and talking about that interplay. So this is its own story, So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if anybody's interested in what it means for this data to be translated, ArcVision's got this great product, and it's been tightly, as you can see, it's been tightly integrated with AVAIL. So things like and what I wanted to show in this was, this is a lot of Revit content, but right inside of these kind of web-based interfaces, right, we have 3D viewing capabilities, and what FOVEA lets you do is actually let users do some editing of this kind of stuff. But you can bring any of this content in, and including, right, I'm going to go to here's a good piece of manufacturer content, right? So one, we're going to be leveraging FOVEA's this capability, I'll just say on the back end on our roadmap around what we're doing with Revit content to have better 3D views and imagery automatically generated and available of all your Revit content. We're going to leverage this tech stack to do that. But besides just these individual objects, right, I can take an entire, let's see here. Maybe. Let me go to GLTF. Entire models. So this is the 2024 Snowden Towers model. So you can see that I'm pulling that down. It's not a small piece of content, pretty good size model. But as soon as that's downloaded and I'm pulling that in, I have the ability to bring this into, well, that's why I was on the GLB files. I have the ability to bring this kind of content into this viewer. So, you'll get a glimpse of, this is that entire project with materials and textures baked into it, I'll just say. And it's all native. And, if I was pulling up our AR headset, I've seen this in the Apple Vision Pro, you can run around this building right inside of this. And so we've got some interesting kind of tech stack workflows here around, but all this is being tightly integrated into the AVAIL, kind of back and forth from these web technologies to what's going on in the desktop. So I think you'll see a series of new capabilities and new product capabilities that'll start to emerge around that. One of the last things I want to show you is the questions around AI. There's several experiments going on, I'll just call them, kind of behind the scenes here, that's going on kind of in a research mode. The first was, we began experimenting with a chatbot. So if I go back into this, not that it's related to this FOVEA channel, but let me see if I can I need to go to a local channel. What you're going to see over here on the right, this hasn't been identified yet, but we've got a chatbot. Our first experiment was, let's chew on our own AVAIL help documentation. So I could ask, this thing like, how do I create a channel? And, we're going to go find the answer to that and bring it back. So you'll see this likely get integrated relatively soon and being able to help. We also find where this is our knowledge base that we use we're using HubSpot on the back end with a knowledge base. So all that information in HubSpot is what's feeding this. And you can see that you can link out then from within Avail to where that original source documentation is. So that's coming. The kind of roadmap for this, though, is to not just us provide help, but you all may have your own help or training that you want to also connect to this bot. So that's the plan, is for you to be able to do that. But I'm going to show you some other kind of interesting. So I'm going to tie a bunch of things together. When I showed you the related content and I showed you a Revit model, a family, but it could be connected to documentation. So those are all different documents. What you're seeing in this channel, got about 40 documents that are, a building product manufacturer. So if I, let me go to my local mode here. So if I were to open up one of these documents, we don't have to concentrate on this too much, but you can see this kind of info in here. And if you'll give me 1 second, I'm going to, I can talk to these documents basically. So I'm going to open up. So this bot looks the same as the other one, except what's happening is this bot is targeted towards the info that's in this channel. So if I did something like, it might be as mundane as knowing a product number. What's a 55L60? That's like a product number. Well, we're looking at all this data. So a 55L60 is a pressure relief control. We tell you where we found that info in here. It could be something like, you could say, what's the part number for a valve position indicator on a clay valve. So these are manufacturer 136101. So I could go ask it, right? Hey, what's the part number for one of these parts? And it'll come back, tell me what the part number is, tell me which documents it found this in. You could ask it things like, more broad. Can you describe the base pan on a Ream Ultra Series? So I'm chatting with this information. So what we think is interesting about where we sit, where Avail sits, is my claim is that in the end, this is a content management problem, which is, where's the source information? Is it the right information? Is it up to date? And can you narrow down your bot to talk to a narrow, I'll put it like this. You get less bad information and fewer hallucinations from a constrained amount of information that you fed it. So instead of like asking across the whole world where you might be getting bad information, you can think about having your own information being managed in Avail, and either down at a channel level, like I'm doing here, or even down to the individual document. We can start to kind of provide these capabilities to talk. The related content then you can now think about this being the new way to search, deep search around this kind of information, finding information you need, and then our related content lets you now connect this back to, here's the piece of technical, here's the Revit file that goes with that product. If that's what you're looking for, you're kind of searching across. So we really, we're experimenting heavily right now, understanding the constraints, what's good, what's bad, where does work need to be done on this, and you're going to see a lot of deep search. We've got a couple of customers that have already actively started working with us on some use cases around this. So things like, you might have a marketing team, biz dev team that's working on RFPs all the time. So you might have a history of historical RFP data that you want to now feed into an engine like this and be able to sit here and, when the next question comes in for the next RFP, feed it in as a question and get an answer back, right? So there's nothing here that's, I'm going to say, it's not rocket science. This is becoming available, I'll say, tech to most everybody that knows how to do it and what to do with it. We're going to be taking this and implementing it and putting it inside of Avail, working with our customers closely about what are the first use cases for this, and can we get this new way to search, talk, and think about retrieving information through the Avail interface along these lines. So that's on the AI chatbot. I'll just, one last thing, and we can open this up for questions along the lines of machine learning. We've been running some successful, I'll call it successful experiments. We're very interested in building, trying to automate tagging. I'll just call it like that. Not so much image-based tagging. Our first experiments are actually around taking file names, unstructured data of file names that you have around all this technical information. And we've been successfully mapping. We're using Omniclass as our kind of basis for this, but we're getting really good results of taking unstructured data, lots of large volumes of unstructured data, and mapping that into a common structure so we know what this thing is or think it is. And then that becomes the connective tissue for a suggestion engine for us being able to look at your content, know what that content is without you having to manually go tag it. And then ultimately, with that context, understanding how we can pull additional information forward that you may need. That's all then back to this kind of related content, either dynamically or statically relating all this information together. So anyway, I'll stop there and let's open this up, answer some questions.
Yeah, I know we got some. Luke, did you have one? Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, it was just a thought. Have you, and maybe I'm behind the curve with this, have you know of anyone who's been using this as sort of like a spec organization or a way of curating specs, either from, as you mentioned, this would be sort of like a way of categorizing internal documentation, especially with the upcoming, related content model and features. Is that something that you anticipate people getting into, or is it already a thing?
I don't know. I haven't had one-on-one conversations with anybody talking about specs, but I could, you got your model, your documents, and your specs. It's like it's going to be one of the big three. And I can't, because it is text-based, I can't imagine it's not going to, the world's known that we've got problems, of spec writing being a thing that's more and more challenging and finding people to do it. So I can't imagine that this isn't one of the first places that you'll start to see this tech being applied. If anybody, if any of you all, this is what we're looking for now. We've got the core technology in the stack. What we need is the feed it with the information, and then ultimately, more than that, your expertise as a domain expert to be able to then talk to it in the same ways that I just did and say, here's what works, here's what doesn't work. We're part of what we'll be doing probably through the summer in this release cycle is building back a feedback loop mechanism so that ultimately you could train your own info and data. So you can imagine feeding it, but then you want to correct it. And that's a part of the loop that's going to have to come back around. So anybody that's interested in that, reach out. We can set this up for you right now. We can let you put info in a channel. We'll chew on it. Right now, we're doing it with PDFs, but in the future, that could be a Google Doc or a Word, cloud-based Word doc that you're connecting into here and keeping up to date with things. And then we'll put a chat bot on that channel for you and let you begin to do just what I was just showing you. Like start to, hey, is this ready for prime time? Not ready for prime time? What's it good for? Not good for? And use your domain expertise to help us understand where are the first use cases. But we're in the position that we're starting to experiment with that and looking for our customers that are ready to.
Would it be possible? This is Cal. Hi, Randall. Would it be possible to open your SDK to have our API talking to yours? Because my company developed their own GPT, their chat GPT, and for obvious security reason, we didn't allow our company to access the classic chat GPT, but we use GPT 4.0. For example, I am admin, so I am able to grab docs, Word documents actually. So we do what you explained earlier. We are already using ChatGPT for our GPT, but the same kind of for RFP, for many stuff. We are, I mean, it's extensively. We're using all the technology, the AI that is available to us.
Yeah, so our goal, Cal.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll just make the comment. Not everybody has 18,000 employees and the resources to do and implement. So we think that we're going to, one of our claims about Avail is that things like what I was just describing and showing ultimately requires, I'll just say, the business line layer of people. It's not an IT project, right? It should be who's got the information. Can they now manage that information and then use that appropriately? And we think that we're in a good position to, since we've already got a content management system that's designed to do that, for us to provide that capability. To your question, Cal, about APIs, love to talk to you more about what that might look like. What I'll say is we have also been using ChatGPT's APIs, but what I'll say is our goal is we're also working closely with Amazon on a lot of this. Our goal is going to be to completely build this stack 100% in Amazon, where your info and your data lives in your own silo and it's not mixed in. I think not that ChatGPT does this, but I think because ChatGPT was the first out there, they've got the albatross around their neck of people not knowing what if your information is now feeding into their engine. They can say whatever they want. I think they've just got a challenge in the market for people to understand that. I think we're going to be much safer. We can do all this very same capability in our own with a Llama and Amazon stack to do these kind of capabilities. And I think there'll be trust, right? Everybody has to trust what's going on with all this, and that's where we're kind of building up our stack. But we could, there's no reason why we shouldn't start thinking about our API is able to talk or get, even hook our chatbot up to your model, right? So you may build your own model behind the scenes, and then we could wire it. One of the things that I think we'll be able to do is this chatbot is a lens, which is a plug-in to AVAIL, and the goal of that will be to let you point that at different models and prioritize which model I want to get the answer from first, and it could be your own model first, and then maybe if it would also go search a different model and provide results back, and we would tell you where we got that info from.
So I have one small question to ask that is relative to your versioning content. I was thinking about something just now that will be great. Since we have already the comment when you click on any content, and we have that comment panel that pops up. I was thinking about, like in any other, what do you call that? PMIS, or project management information service, whatever platform, like Oracle Connect or whatever, that has, or Kahua, etc., that has the possibility to, in the versioning, to say, okay, this is out of date. So I have a content, I would like to put a stamp saying, okay, I uploaded today that content, and I'm putting a time card or a timeline for that content to be reviewed in 3 months. But I'm not going to remember that. And I don't want anybody else to remember that.
We've got that on the roadmap for the palettes feature, Cal. Palettes feature, we just are going to get this first version out, but one of the roadmap design items that's already been designed was this idea that you can assign that to somebody and you can put a timestamp on, hey, this should be delivered, or I want it to automatically go away at a certain time.
And that tag should be, and I asked Todd, and Todd told me that you might have it in the roadmap as well, is when we upload content, we don't know when it was uploaded unless you keep a log, and nobody is keeping a log. That log is gonna disappear somehow. So so do you think it's something somebody has
I don't have permission to
I do.
Thank you, Will. He did.
Thanks, Will. Yep. No, Cal, good questions. A lot of things about when and where the dates are. I think you're going to start to see us taking better advantage of some of that in the interfaces for sorting, finding. There was a little bit of peak of that in that palettes, in that I could say sort this by the newest and the oldest, and so we're going to start taking better advantage of that. There's also just there's just a lot better analytics info and things that we're going to start doing. The real future of this, I think, in this next 5.0 release cycle, will be, I'm going to call it substantially complete with kind of UI UX issues about how to manage all this. We'll turn our sights on taking advantage of all this info we've got and begin to automatically make associations between content, automatically understand the project that you're working on, and dynamically deliver the content that you're going to want to use instead of you having to go to all of that content. And we can do that because we're seeing the information that you used on previous projects, and we can dynamically now leverage that context and that information to say, hey, you just started a project of building type X. Hey, I've seen the last 10 projects, 5 projects you did on that front. Here's the 100 pieces of content that you probably need to start that project with. And then the related content kicks in and says, well, that's not the one I want to use. Show me others that are in the library that are like this. And now here this stuff all comes, forward instead of you going and searching. So we're really laying the groundwork for that kind of possibility. One last thing before, and we can stay on here and answer as many questions, but I promised that I was going to say one of the questions was about web-based. So we've already, what you're seeing, this is AVAIL in a web browser. So I can go into a channel, I can search everything. We started 2 years ago a mobile initiative, which was all built on web technologies. And that web capability, this may time out, it's on my dev server. But all of this is, completely searchable. So the same, that initialize, come back. Yeah. So, here's content in a channel. I could click on one of these pieces of content. It's going to show me a high-res preview of that. I could share the link. That was kind of our first was, what would you want to do on mobile? I'm going to share a link to that thing because I'm at the mall with the family. I could pull it up on my phone, see it, share a link to it. But it might be something like, let me just look for like a jam detail. I was going to also show you, come back. Something's not searching. So here's a detail. This is also, we've been building these markup tools. So coming soon are going to be built in, we're calling them annotation, but it'll include native redlining capabilities. So I showed you earlier on palettes, the ability to get this stuff out to PDF. So if your workflow is to use something like Bluebeam, have at it. We think that the future, though, is not going to have a religious fight about whether I want to use Bluebeam or do this natively, but ultimately what you want to do is keep as much of this digital as possible. And I don't want to create another piece of content if I don't, right? If I spit out a PDF, that's something now that has to be kept track of, passed around. So we're working on this annotation layer that'll allow you to start to do some of this kind of stuff natively right inside of AVAIL around those palettes. And then boom, it all stays digital. You've got a digital history of it, and you're not keeping track of files anymore. So
a couple of people in the chat that have been patient asking some questions. Moses and Casey both asked about when we were showing reading into PDF documents, could you read into Revit files? So the example being, if you harvested a bunch of drafting views, could you query those views and get information? Like, what are some of the initial ideas that we have around being able to talk to Revit content?
Yep. So I'll answer that in 2 ways. The core tech around this, what I was demonstrating with the bot, is around having information right in the form of text in the database that we're searching against, and then we're using LLMs to do the natural language piece of it and take your question, translate it into a search, perform the search, bring back the results, and then translate it back into an answer. So that's the core of that tech. So anything that we can get text-wise and shove into the database can be talked to and searched in that way, including that Revit content. So we already have a plugin called the Revit Tag Generator, which knows how to go get at your asking these parameters. We limited it to that because ultimately, if you're building this kind of interface for the tags and the search up front, I can't have infinite number of parameters coming in and just jamming up this interface. It wouldn't perform very well. I can take all that info and shove it into a backend database and make it searchable. So any content where we can get access to the information, either through a plugin, an API, or any of that, has the possibility of, and with AVAIL, we've already built a plugin architecture to allow us to chew and get information through a plugin. So we can write a plugin for Rhino, or we've already got the one for Revit, or anything that gives us access via those set of tools to the info that's in those files. We can now chew on that, pull it out, shove it back into this engine on the back end, and now you have the possibility of doing much deeper kind of conversations and search around the data that's coming or has been trapped inside those files and hard to get to. So we'll start experimenting with that, but we kind of started with the PDFs and said let's start there and get our arms around this and move forward. So
I'd invite anybody in the meeting that wants to ask one directly. Go ahead. You don't have to put it in the chat if you just want to unmute and ask.
I have a question about the AI and tech that you've been talking about. If you kind of mentioned about like a suggestion engine, and so that could be very helpful because I work with a lot of different departments, and we have marketing that does a lot of resources, and we have gigabytes worth of just images and stock files that come from various forums and websites, but the file names make no sense. So are you talking, would there be something down the road where I could dump all this data into AVAIL and then have some sort of AI run through it and be like, oh, this image is of a child holding an apple, and it could generate keywords for like child and apple, versus the file name right now is like 3347AX7, which nobody knows what that means. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. I think the answer to that's yes. We haven't been concentrating on image tagging. We've been working on text. We've been working on taking file names, mainly because most of this technical information, the design data that people are using and managing in libraries of content usually has good info encoded into the file name. It's how everybody's organized their stuff. So we've been concentrating on, can we take that as assuming that it's unstructured data, even though if it's a Revit file, we've got parameters or we may have some other structured data. But the reason we're taking this approach is we can apply the very same stuff that we're doing around Revit file name and apply that to an AutoCAD file name. Any piece, a Bentley MicroStation file, and do the very same thing too. So we've been concentrating not on the image side, but on the technical content and that side of it. I think what we'll likely see, the reason that we had been experimenting over the last few years with auto tagging imagery, that tech, right, up till now, I'll say, has been largely trained around consumer info. You put your photos on Facebook or share it somewhere, and it says it's a palm tree and a car. Way different to think about auto identifying what you'd like to search for in this domain space. So that requires a lot of training that maybe hasn't been done yet. As we build out the training inference tools that I said earlier that we're going to build out, that'll likely set the stage for us to be able to say, hey, I can chew on those images. I'm going to do my best bet of using some of the existing models. When I say models, AI models, to guess what's in there and provide that info. But I'll also give you a mechanism, or your team a mechanism, to go, no, that's wrong, and I'm going to type in what I think this is. And that will be a feedback loop that'll begin to train on your own info and data around that. So long-winded answer, which I can do, but I think we're heading in that direction. That's the holy grail. We'd love for you to just shove all your unstructured data in here, and we make sense of all of it, and let you consume it, right, in exciting new ways.
Yeah, no, that's great. Even just like some sort of suggestion or something to start with, because going item by item, trying to re-tag everything is daunting, and no one's going to do that. But having at least some assistance from AVAIL or AI to get us in the ballpark would mean the world to a lot of people. Yeah,
I'll tell you, the hardest thing, and I'm actually a little bit surprised by this. The hardest thing is we can build all these tools, but we can't do much of it without your all's help. And a lot of that is you've got to give me the sample data. You got to give me access or help. Let's do a project together where it's like, here's examples of the data I'm talking about and what I'm trying to get out of it, instead of us just guessing. And that goes with a lot of this content. Our support desk gets all the time. It's like, oh, I've got a problem with some content not doing something in AVAIL. It's like, well, give me the file, right? It's like pulling teeth to get them to give you the sample file so we can test it and see what's wrong with it. Why is it breaking? What is it about that content? So we kind of live in a weird space where, because we're consuming all this content, we get on average 17,000 new pieces of content are indexed into Avail every day by our customer base. A lot of that's Cal, but 17,000 new pieces of content are coming in every day. And, for us to know, and that's dozens and dozens of main file formats that data is coming in there as, and depending on what they're doing with it, it's like, man, I can't troubleshoot. Everything works 99.999% of the time. And then it's like, when it doesn't work, you got to give me that file so I can tell what's going on or what's weird about, that kind of outlier. So anyway, I'd love, if you've got a project like that, we're actually actively looking for and prioritizing based on customers coming to us. Hey, we've got this capability. We're road mapping what we're going to do with this. Let's come up with the right use cases, and then let's work together on it.
Oh, sure. I'll show you guys whatever you want to see from my side from Avail, if that helps.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Gotten through the chat questions pretty well. John asked earlier, and I don't know if he's still on, John Carbon asked about smart caching for cloud hosted content. If, I think it's set to default location now, but would we be able to provide some capability to change that in the future?
Good question. It's not on the immediate roadmap. I'll tell you the reason that we do it the way we do it is we put it in the local location in a very specific structured way so that the interface for that user in Avail knows if that content's already been downloaded or not. It's a much more difficult problem when that data isn't kind of accessible by that local desktop or seen by the way that data is structured to know if the file has already been downloaded or not. It sounds weird, but you can imagine if you host it in cloud and you've shared that across, 100 people or 1,000 people, each person, downloads it. It's not a global download indicator. You have to know if the individual has downloaded it and has access to it. So the reason that we store that stuff in a local cache is we've engineered that in such a way that the application knows whether that content has been downloaded locally. So it's going into a very specific structure. So that's different now to think about centralizing that cache, because now you get back into the problem. Well, maybe it isn't a problem. If you could centralize it, as long as everybody has access to that central cache, you could have one copy of it being brought down. But now you're back to why you have this shit in the cloud to begin with. If you've got a network location where you're putting all that, why isn't everybody feeding from that network location instead of it being in the cloud? So you get into all these kind of rhetorical circles about why people are doing certain things. So
it was actually a question from a user today. He was asking if he could change the location of his local cache because he had a second hard drive he wanted to put it to, and that's the basis of the question.
Yeah, that should be possible, right? Yeah, we should be able to. Yeah, I'll take that as a note, and we could decide to add that to the roadmap. Let a user change where they want their local cache to go.
Yeah.
That way they could offload it off their main drive onto a secondary drive or something. I don't think that would be difficult, but I need to go talk to the team.
Thank you.
It sounds easy until they tell me why we've done something.
Right.
That makes it hard, right? It's like all this stuff's interconnected. It's a complicated thing. And, kudos our team here, right? We've got this is a small company and we got a crack team that are just cranking. We are cranking. We're in the whole team's been intact since the start of this project, and future looks bright.
Mark it as a could have. How about that?
Yeah.
Clear in the chat in the message board here. So and we're also we're happy to stay as long as you guys want. So feel free to ask away. You can put it in the chat and I can ask, or you guys can unmute yourself and ask.
Sure, I can continue. My question, I have whatever. Sorry, guys. Workspaces, correct? So you saw that in the roadmap. It was supposed to be available to us beginning of 2024. It looks like you guys, you pushed it to the end of the year.
It just keeps getting scooted. There's a bunch
yes,
of there's a bunch of stuff that we did. Here's what I'll say. The new Project Navigator that we rolled out last year, when you go into that Project Navigator, it's actually locally, we're seeing everything that's in the Revit project. So
yeah,
I think we're positioned well. One, we get asked all the time, can you help us understand what came out of the library, what didn't come out of the library? There's a bunch of stuff about, now that we have kind of sight of the data that's in the project, that we can start doing a lot of interesting things on the information side of telling you where this stuff came from, what's in there, what's being used. The workspaces is just another kind of interface layer that now lets you start to say, here's this project, and we can begin to now put, each one of those projects have its info kind of organized for you in there. The palettes, I think, will be a great addition to that too, at least conceptually, or maybe there's a new feature that's like, we call this one palettes, but maybe there's something new that's about, hey, when we dynamically build that library for that project, that could show up in that workspace, right? Here's the content that you're going to start this project with because we've seen you, use this content. So we're,
sure.
we'll get there.
And talking about Project Navigator, when is your plan to integrate the links? Because right now you're not counting them, we're not seeing them. So we have sheets, we have groups, we have whatever, we have families, we have, but links,
we could.
We use Project Navigator a lot as by our designers, or how do you call that? Our Revit specialists, let's call them that way. As a QC, so BIM QC, so they do a Revit quality control, because we know, for example, per discipline, we know that we should have, but we do have, we do use Power BI dashboards for our QC, but sometimes it's easier to just look into the,
Yeah, if you could send me a note, Cal, describing that, we can probably add it relatively easy. We're sitting there with, we have access to all that info and data, so it's all just people bringing us that specific problem. And then if we want to set up a call after this, I'd love for you to just show me what you're talking about and make sure we understand it. And then
today not, but or later.
Probably not today.
No, me neither. I'm swamped after that. So yeah. How is your 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow?
My 2 p.m. Eastern tomorrow.
Or Friday. Friday, I am open the whole afternoon if you want.
Friday at 2 is yours, Cal.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
You want to send an invite?
I will.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, anytime. Happy to help.
One last thing for those of you that are still left, I'll be remiss. If you're interested in what's going on in AI and ML, we the last few years have been hosting an event we call Confluence. Several of you have visited us here in Kentucky annually when we do this, but we've started doing them regionally. And on April 17th, we're in New York City, in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Naval Yard, hosting a one-day Confluence event around AI and machine learning. And we've got people from SHOP and Perkins and Will participating, Thornton Tomasetti participating. So great chance if you want to come. We'll obviously be there talking about some of the stuff that we're doing, but we've got a great, think of it as like a one-day kind of deep dive with a bunch of the people that are thinking about this and working on it. So if you're in that region for sure, or have colleagues that are in that region, send them, it's $200 to sign up for it, covers the food and all the stuff we're going to, kind of do for the day, but curated a great set of conversations around this. So would love to see you there. You can go to our website. Go to our website and go to Confluence, and you'll see NYC.
Zoe just submit a link
in the chat. Yeah.
Okay.
In the chat. Yes. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Zoe. And Zoe did all the work on that webpage, so it looks like a very nice looking landing page. Used to look terrible before we had Zoe doing it.
Moses asked a good question.
If design applications start to keep content in a browser and not in localized files, does Avail plan on incorporating that content for indexing?
Say it again.
I think Moses is asking, or he says, if design applications start to keep content in a browser and not in localized files, how can we?
Yeah, I saw him. He actually posed that question before. He's talking about, like, what's going to go on with Forma or some of these kind of future apps that are fileless. Here's the thing. It may not be a file, but it's a blob of data somewhere that's going to have a content management interface on the front end to get to it. So as long as the APIs are accessible, you can look at what we've done with even our Harvest app. We virtualize the representation of all this stuff, and it's not even related necessarily. Sometimes it could be related to a file, or it could be related to a point in a database. So Avail's tech stack is well suited, and the interfaces that we've built, we're abstracting a lot of this info anyway. So now you can think about if that's a technology where the data lives in a database, or the content is in a database, we could represent those as individual things. They become taggable, searchable, and as long as the APIs and whatever that tech is are available to allow us to touch it. So we've been doing some of this work, I'll just say, around project wise, like with MicroStation. That's a good example. That's a thick database application with a lot of content that's in it. It has to be in that app, and we've been showing that we can reach into that via the APIs and represent that content in Avail as individual objects, and then reach back in and pull the data out of something like a project-wise if that's what's needed. Sound familiar, Cal?
So you are yeah, of course, familiar. So when are you planning to get the MicroStation sales available into Avail?
I'm waiting for Will to sell one of your colleagues on this before.
I mean, they know, he knows they are in the waiting block. We need to have a conversation again with Kevin O'Connor. Will.
Yes, it's a chicken or an egg, Cal.
Okay. You need funds to develop. So you need us. Okay.
We need, well, it's Randall mentioned this earlier, but there is generally we can ideate on things to a certain degree, but then someone that sits in your seat has to go, these are the 4 things that make me want to throw my computer against a wall. Right?
Sure.
So there is some back and forth that we do need.
I mean, it's doable. You know that if you made it happen, it's not only Parsons. It's a lot of those very large engineering firms or EA engineering architectural firms who are MicroStation based. You have another big client is Pentagon, just to not name it. Think about it. We're talking about billions of dollars of projects in engineering on their side.
Just go get them to give us $1 million and we'll do it, Cal.
I can't hear you well. I am in the tunnel. Yeah, I'm gonna defer you to my ChatGPT. Just kidding.
Right. Did anybody win the music contest, Will?
Oh yeah,
did I miss that?
A lot of people.
John got that fast. You found a friend. You found your. It was hard. The picture wasn't very good, and I apologize about the graininess of the image. But those that knew like that.
Yeah, big Rush fan too. I recognized the set right away.
I saw them live 18 times, John.
I've seen them once. That was back in the late '80s, like the Signals tour. So that was quite a ways ago.
We're cut of the same cloth then.
Yep.
Don, I sent you an email. If you want to just reply back to me, we'll get you a couple shirts, and just let me know what size and where to send them. You just reply to my email.
Will do.
Good. Hopefully, was this helpful? Like to have this kind of a format and kind of open to talk about. We'll do more of these, right? We're not shy.
Yeah.
We like to talk. Will and I are professional talkers, so it's like we could do these all day long.
Yeah. it's hard to stop you to speak up, Randall. I'm just kidding. Now we like your input. So I mean, we saw a couple of emails you guys talking about having like a user base forum. So when are you planning to?
I think the plan is to do a couple of online things throughout this year, and then to have something in person like the day before AU.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
As the first year,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, in
Do
October.
a half day to a full day kind of session, right? So, who is that, James? Is that Seaver?
Mark, yeah, Mark Seaver, your good old buddy, your old roommate.
Tell Mark we said hi.
Said hi.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Moses.
I had a quick question. I duplicated it in the the QA space. Is there a link to the AVAIL roadmap, and are these features that we talked about today on it? I know I'm going to get questions on, well, when is the AI going to be released, and when's the markup feature going to be released? And I want to have an answer.
Yeah, those aren't the two that you just mentioned are not specifically on that roadmap slide, but we'll get that roadmap slide to you so that you can share it. The palettes include the PDF export, but the goal is that we're going to integrate the native redlining capability. It'll show up in a couple of different places in the interface, but a lot of that code's been written. Now it's going to be in this release cycle. So over the next few months, as we're releasing these features, you'll see that come. The AI chatbot, I'd say we're just still in research mode. We have the ability, we've integrated some of this with AVAIL already, so we can begin doing research with customers on that way they can, again, it's almost like we've got the technology there. Now we need to understand what you want to do with it, and you feed it your own data and then give us the feedback about what's working or not working about it. So we're just in the mode, there's no productization schedule for that now, but as we learn, you probably will see the help bot come out as we release one of these upcoming desktop releases. But as far as you feeding your own data in there, we're probably into the summer before we could even think about productizing that, I'll say.
Got it. Thanks.
I had a quick question about FOVEA, ArcVision stuff. How's that pairing look for you in the future? Like, what kind of influences on our workflows will that have, or is it more of just sort of a viewing tool within the AVAIL app?
Good question, Jason. We're gonna take some of that core capability just around Revit content, just for rendering thumbnails and a viewer, and looking to integrate that as part of our just native better handling and viewing of Revit content. So that's part of it. The FOVEA, I'll just say FOVEA proper as its own product that ArcVision is offering in this translation, the way we're thinking about this and where we think that there's really interesting things there. I was describing when I think I got cut off, the kind of interplay between teams working in different applications and all that, as the project is moving along and people are in and out of these different apps, the idea that you need that data to fuse together from a visualization standpoint, the core of FOVEA is well suited because it knows how to translate this data natively, and then there's ultimately these viewers and viewing capabilities, and or send it like up into Inkscape, complete with materials and textures and natively. It's not a dumbing down of that info. I think that's what's important to understand about it. It understands like Blender and Rhino and understands the material structure and all of that kind of stuff, and is able to store that in a neutral, like we're using ArcVision's using USD as one of the central ways, neutral formats to hold all this data, and then has mapped that out natively into these other applications of what they can do. The other piece of that then is that we think that an interesting concept to think about is, I talk in terms of a company, especially a company of any size, that the knowledge and the people actually doing the work are at the edges of the network. So if you think about it, it's all the people in your organization that are out actually doing the work. They're the ones creating information, producing, creating new content, maybe procuring and buying content from the outside world or bringing it in specific to a project. Well, if you can think about if all that content that's being produced and created is coming back into a central repository, that can also then be being translated automatically into those 14 different file formats. So now somebody was over here working in 3ds Max and built something for a project. Why shouldn't that end up in a central library, but it's in a native file format that somebody wants to bring into Revit, that's friendly to Revit, or wants to bring into SketchUp? So we think that that's also a piece of this, is to think about that you want to basically think of it as crowdsourcing in your own organization to where the content's being created, and then centralizing it so that it's coming back in and then being translated automatically so that the other person can now search and consume it in whatever app natively that they're wanting to consume it in. So democratization is another thing that we throw around all the time. It's like the democratization. When something's created, you should democratize it. It should be, why does it have to just be Revit family? Why couldn't that Revit family be consumed in SketchUp natively, or vice versa?
Yeah, that's where I was kind of hoping you were going to lead that discussion. It's a nightmare with standards to have to create all these different platforms content. If it was one, that'd be awesome, but sounds pretty theoretical still, at least as far as avails.
It's all the tech is there. We're now just looking, we're starting these conversations with customers. There's some customers that are using it already, and we're just trying to understand those workflows and where and how that should work. One thing that ArcVision's already done with that FOVEA app is like right inside. What I didn't show you was like right inside of Revit, you're literally one button click from either selecting a piece, something that's in your Revit project, and you select it and you hit one button and it shows up in FOVEA, translated 2 minutes later into all 14 different file formats, or the entire project. It's like in less than 5 minutes, you can take like an entire project like that, and it's in there, it's been translated, and you can bring it into the other app. So, we're having conversations with lots of different customers about how that would be used. We're obviously been working over the last year and integrating that tightly into the AVAIL content management infrastructure, so that but these are the stories that we're trying to tease out and kind of understand what people, it's a lot, so it takes people willing to get on the horn and have the conversation, understand what it is that we're doing, and then start to understand what specific problems that they have that they think that this could help to solve. So love to have more of that conversation with you, Jason. All right, Will, anything else?
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Laura.
No, I think we're pretty good in here, and we're at 90 minutes. So I appreciate everybody that stayed on late here. I've gotten a couple emails with a little bit of follow-up that we can do directly. If anybody has other follow-up questions, you can send them to me if you like, or you can send them to support@getavail.com. That'd also be fine. I'm pretty fast on the email, but sometimes the customer questions are routed in through support, so that's fine too. But yeah, no, we appreciate you guys coming and staying and supporting what it is that we're trying to do. So I'll give one last call if anybody's got anything. Sold. All right.
Appreciate it.
We'll send a link out.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everybody.
Cheers.